It's showtime. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. It is time to make sense to the news. It is time to get ready to rumble. And when I say get it ready to rumble, I actually have the Swedish rumble, the one and only. And in this podcast, guys, we're going to make sense of what's going on in the Takeover news. This is today's agenda, to be fair and honest. We're going to talk about the Sky News, Rattcliffe Takeover, 25% delay. What's going on there? And what does it mean with the 25%? Because we've been hearing a lot of controversial reports regarding the figures, the finance and stuff like that. And I also have joined by me, Paul White, who is a little bit of a finance expert. He already became a little bit of a finance expert as well. And also Richard Arnold sacking and the future of Manchester United, because we've been linked to various types of sporting operational people, which the club definitely need in terms of CEO, director of football. And last but not least, we're going to finish off with the FFP, because the Premier League FFP is now cracking down heavily on the Premier League teams. We've seen Everton getting a 10 points deduction. And now, what about Manchester City and the 115 charges? Guys, welcome to the show. And don't forget to like and subscribe to this video. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't, and the notification, because here I'm going to introduce one by one to the stage. Mr. Paul White, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm not doing too bad. How's yourself, Mick?
Not too shabby. Not too shabby. In the end of the week, what I am, it's coming to that 12 months of grinding the strategical review, and I believe that, including myself, wanted to get it over and done with, to be honest. But thanks for asking. It's having a coffee, as per usual. What you're drinking?
Nothing at the moment.
Nothing at the moment. That's cool. That's cool. It's 6 o'clock evening time where I'm sitting. And so, yeah, it's all good. And without any further ado, also, Mr. Swedish Rumble. How you doing, Mr. Swedish Rumble?
I'm fine, thank you. Pleasure to be on.
Pleasure to have you. It's been a hot minute since we had our last podcast. A lot of things have happened since then. And just to kick off the show, guys, like around the table, I want to start with you, Swedish Rumble. For people that haven't really followed you on Twitter, you have done a fantastic work in analyzing, the overall sales takeover from a legal perspective, but also the FFP charges. So around the table, how about a little bit of an introduction, who you are and what you actually do for a living, sir?
Yes, so I'm a business lawyer by trade and work at a law firm in Sweden, and of course a big Manchester United fan. And the last few months, or it's closing in on a year now, there's been so much to analyze, so I've become more and more active. Football is more about everything going on off the pitch these days, it seems.
Pitch, yes. Yeah. So you are a specialist in merger and acquisition, from my understanding. You work in a big international law firm, and to be fair, a lot of Manchester United fans that are on Twitter, they admire your tweets. I think you have about 15,000 followers. You've grown substantially, and thank you so much for all your contribution. At the end of the day, as a global fan community, all we care about is the Glazer full sale only, or partial sale, or whatever you call it. But fair enough. So thank you. Welcome. And what's the time where you are now at the moment, and where are you?
I'm in Sweden. Dark snow.
Dark.
Snow in Sweden this time of the year. But I don't complain. I like it here.
You don't complain. You like it. Big up, big up. And Paul White, for people that have not seen you, of course, we had numerous of podcasts here, and you've been providing some great stock market and financial information. How are you feeling today, sir?
Half dying today. Man flu for the last couple of days. I may be coughing quite a bit through this here. I do apologize.
Maybe I should not zoom in on your eyes then.
No, don't. You can see the bags, boys. That's how bad it's been.
Oh, speedy recovery, my friend. Speedy recovery. It must be the change of season. It's winter coming, right? It's very cold. Where are you sitting at the moment? Are you in Northern Ireland or where are you?
Yeah, Northern Ireland at the moment, and it looks like it's sunny outside, but it's not. It's cloudy and raining out at the moment. It looks brighter than what it is.
Yeah. Big up, big up. Anyway, big up for the people that made it to the VR room. Please, super chat if you want to make sense. We were priority super chats today because it's not often we get such an astute panel together. The heavyweights in the room. People know my face, Mick Ruby. Been doing about 200 podcasts regarding Glazers out sales takeover and doing forensic investigations. And for disclaimer, we are not the news. We do not make the news. What we do here on this channel is providing a voice of reasoning, meaning that we report on the current situation and applying our logic, sense, and reasoning to that as opinion. So that's what we're going to do here, and do not take it as a disclaimer. I hope we're all good with that. And big up for everyone that's coming in. Stephanie Griffith is here. I can see Nigel Flynn is here as well. Charlie Mamin is here. Compost Smurf is here as well. And Angie, one of our moderators, saying good morning to you guys as well. And we have Ashid as well. We have Jarvis Cocker, one of our panel and regulars in here, saying good morning, afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Big up Swedish Rumble. Love your tweets. Big up Paul. Hey, Mick. Hey, how you doing? Jarvis as well. Hope you're doing well in Norway. Speaking about darkness, this Jarvis, you know where he lives? I will ask you, Swedish Rumble, because you're saying
north of the polar circle.
Oh, yeah. He's in Tromsø. Tromsø,
Yeah.
Norway. That's the north is not as far north you can come up in Norway, right?
Yeah.
So he gets the northern lights, and in the summer it's not like it never gets dark. So it's unbelievable. You know, I like to see the northern lights. It's part of my bucket list. So yeah. Anyway, big up for everyone that's coming in. Mark is here. He has producer Mark has some problems with his computer. He's coming back in. Nikki Carrigan said good morning to you guys. Good morning to everyone. And 14 likes. And 42 watching, we understand. And Angie has been a member for 5 months. And big up to you, Angie, as well. Let's kick on the show, guys. Let's start this show. And I want to start directly with question number 1. So, guys, we are coming to the end of the strategical review, right? So, why do you think that 25% of Sir Jim Ratcliffe and the Glazers are viable, and why is that they're currently delay, in the current market? Because we've been hearing Sky News saying Monday, then there was the funeral on Bobby Charlton, and then it says Friday, and now they say until the 23rd, because that marks the end of the strategic review, and now we're hearing maybe next year or maybe never. Jokes aside, since you are the debutant, Swedish Rumble, what's your thoughts and feelings regarding this? Is it pretty much a media agenda?
I think we know the number 25%, but that's since that alone doesn't really make sense to just buy 25% and then do nothing else. I think everyone can assume, and it's surely correct, that the lion part of this agreement is something else than the 25%. And so getting their hands on 25% is one thing. It would probably be a public tender offer regarding the A shares and a private deal with the Glazers. But what we know very little of is the other side of this agreement between the Glazers and Ineos, and that is normally done through a shareholders agreement, which is common. I don't think this transaction structure in that sense sticks out all that much. But I think the key point here is really that we still don't know what the agreement is.
Yes,
we can
true.
guess, and one starting point for many is that Ineos wouldn't do something that's stupid, and I think people rarely do. So that there are of course some hopes that Ineos will secure sufficient rights to make the club progress. But it's not entirely clear to guess at all points of this transaction.
Speculations. Yeah, true. I mean, I'm going on your tweet because I'm really inspired by your tweet, to be honest. Like, there are some conflicting reports, and I totally agree with you. Exactly how Ineos share acquisition of the 25% bull because constructed. Because at the end of the day, like, if you go on Sky News, I thought I was bad in algebra and mathematics, but you've been seeing different calculations. So, you go on the different structure, how you going with alternative one, 12.5% of all the shares, 12.5 times 164,744.93 equals 20,593.12 from each of the Class A shares, and Class B shareholders or alternative 2, 25% of Class A. I'm not going to go into this, a lot of numbers here, right? So I'm not going to confuse the audience, and 25% on the Class B shares. So if you add on, so basically if you say 25%, that means that can it be plausible that you're buying 25% of the Class A and 25% of the Class B, or is it 12.5
each?
Yeah, because 12.5 of the Glazers shares gives you pretty much they cash that into their own pocket, instead of going to the club, and then you have to buy out the Class A shareholders, like Lindsay Train, Boeing Group, and all them, right? And that's for me, it doesn't really make sense. So you go on to say, why does it matter? And you doubt that it has a significant impact since there are significant more Class B shares. Alternative 2 is better for Ineos, the Glazers, and its own natural way to structure 25% tender offer. So there's been a lot of reports like 1.5 and the premium buyout offer might be $33 per share.
Yeah.
For me, it's a little bit of a confusing, and I want to make sense out of this. So hence I'm asking you, like, this is your tweet, but you work in mergers acquisition. Can you make people in the audience make a little bit more sense? Because I think that a lot of people has been confused, and even Sky News has been confusing as well in terms of their report.
Yeah, and I think it's important to establish why do Ineos do this, and I think it's at the end of the day to get influence or Manchester United, they need to agree with the Glazers, because the Glazers have that influence today, and for Ineos to assume parts of that influence, at least on the sporting side, they need the Glazers to agree to a deal, and so that's one condition that must be met. On the other hand, there might be legal requirements or opposition from the Class A shareholders, and the Class A shareholders, of course, must have a voice for their approval to be have any meaning, and I think that's also one of the unknown. How much influence does the Class A shareholders have in this process? And I think it seems like Ineos and the Glazers, to a fairly large extent, have agreed, have a common view on what it will take between them to get something done. What we don't know is what it will take for the Class A shareholders to approve this, and if it takes, if they need an approval at all, or if it's just sufficient that they construct their offer in accordance with a rule. So
Welsh Girl 68 is saying, I understand it's big business and things take time, but there's no official updates. So it's frustrating from the global fan base. I understand. And you spoke about the minority shareholders. We're talking about the biggest one, which is Lindsay Train. And we know that there's been some, what do you call, litigation challenges with the 69%, and he's gone down from 69% to 51 to 25. So for me, does not really make sense. And there was also an interview with the Times when they had with Mark Train as well, where he said, like, we don't know anything about that. We haven't been informed. So I find it a little bit remarkable. And I want to hear from you, Paul, as well. I know, what's your thoughts on feeling that? I think it's more, in retrospect, and when you look at it from a logical standpoint, I think it's the British media has been setting the timelines and the expectations. It's like a transfer window to say it's going to happen. Done deal the other day as well.
Well, my opinion, first of all, A-class shareholders, they wouldn't do anything. That's purely legal. They wouldn't be included in this deal because if it is going to be a public tender offer, they can't know in advance what the public tender offer is going to be because that's market manipulation. So that's 101. That's also the reason why your guy from Lindsay Trade's getting frustrated, and it's why a lot of investors get frustrated when they're dealing with a company with a dual share class, especially when one of them has a higher voting percentage than the other one. They are always frustrated in these types of deals when it comes to these guys due to the fact that they have very little input and say. Onto the 25%, it depends what way they want to go. It depends what way they can get the legal wording, because you have to treat all shareholders fairly in any type of takeover or minority investment. So the Glazers can use their wording, and Sir Jim can be, we'll buy 25% of each option, which basically means we're buying the same percentage as in percentage value of each option. So that would mean they're buying 25% of B class, which pits it at 17.25%. And then they're buying 20% of A class, which would be 7.75%. So basically what that means is it reduces the risk of Sir Jim hitting the A share threshold to pass the deal, because he has to hit that threshold. And you'll definitely get 7.75% of the A class holdings, because unfortunately most retail holders don't actually own their own shares. They're owned by brokerages, and a lot of brokerages have clauses in, if we get a tender offer that's a certain percentage over market value, we'll automatically sell your shares, and you agree to them things anyway. Plus, if he does it that way, Sir Jim comes out with 17.25% of B shares, which effectively, in my opinion, makes him very likely to be appointed co-chairman of the board, because he would be the highest single voting entity in the company. Even at 12.5%, if I've done the percentages right on the Glazers B share holdings, he would still be the single highest voting entity on the board. With the timelines. Yeah. Sorry, what were you going to say?
The ones that hold the power is the Class B shareholders, the Glazers. They have, I think, 10 times voting power than the rest, right?
Yeah, but that's why he wants to buy. Yeah, that's why he wants to buy the B shares. This is one of the reasons as well why you're probably seeing delay. Well, people call it delays. I wouldn't really call it a delay, because this isn't just a 20. What's been made clear in the last couple of weeks is this is not just a simple 25% deal. It's a bit like if it was Sheik Jassim buying 100%. It's not so much of a complicated deal to do. If it's the way the Sir Jim deal's being structured, what you're probably finding is you're probably talking about 3 or 4 separate deals that are being combined into one, because you have one deal for the Glazers shares, you have another deal for the A-class shareholders, you'll have then another sub-deal to give them sporting control, then you'll have another deal then that draws out the outline if there is a pathway to control, and that can involve so many different things. So these are really, really long, complicated contracts to draw out and a lot of things to review. So actually, to be fair, the way I see it, since the Mark Clatterman, if I said his name right, post came out, the longer it takes from him saying how much and he was very choice in his words, he said it's a price for the Glazers shares so he doesn't break any rules. The longer it takes ongoing from that, the more optimistic I am that this is not just 25% and I take control of sporting control, that this sounds like a lot more complicated of a deal going through. And the more complicated this deal is, the higher chance that this is going to be a staged buyout. But that's just kind of the way I look at it generally. It's not like you're just buying shares.
Let's hear from the Swedish Rumble that actually works with the large mergers and acquisitions, tendering contract. I mean, are you agreeing what Paul is saying there? I mean, Mark here is saying, he cannot buy the Class B shares unless Glazers petition the New York Stock Exchange to adjust the greens and the conditions.
Yep. First of all, I think Paul puts it perfectly the way he divides it up into almost 4 sub transactions. That's really what it is about. And the most important part of that transaction is the later 2 mentioned. What control will it get, and is there a path to acquiring all shares or more shares at least? So that's, I agree 100% with that. And then in relation to this question from the chat here, it's true that today only the Glazers can own Class B shares. For Ineos to be able to acquire Class B shares, the Articles of Association of Manchester United must be amended, and that is probably a part of this transaction, that it includes an undertaking for the Glazers or the Class A shareholders to decide on amending the articles.
If I remember, I read through the memorandum of it, Swedish. As far as I'm concerned, when I read through our memorandum, it's actually not very complicated to do. All they need to do is do the special resolution, which they have to give. It's almost like an AGM. They give 7-day notice, and then they need a quorum. And it's not going to be that very hard for them to change the memorandum. People make it sound complicated, but the memorandum change is actually very, very simple because they hold so much of the voting power. There's no way that memorandum doesn't get changed. That's my understanding of reading it in a way.
Yeah. But one thing that complicates it is that just looking at the memorandum and the rules on the New York Stock Exchange and Cayman Island law. Then it should be possible for the Glazers and the Ineos to just disregard the Class A shareholders altogether. And I think that was the plan initially, if the reports are correct.
That was challenged, though.
That they would acquire 50% plus the remaining 18% after 3 years. But obviously they have rethought that plan for some reason, and it definitely seems like the pushback from the Class A shareholders have had an effect here.
I think so. Yeah,
but it's
the thing about that, Swedish, is it's a very, very simple actually rule under again, when you read through the thing, the memorandum's massive, but there is a mention of a Cayman Island rule that says all profits and I can't remember, it's like dividends and everything that goes into quite a lot of things needs to be shared equally between B class and all shareholders. So if you're selling a chunk off of the company, you have to include the A shareholders in the deal. Now, they say fair value. That is the interpretation that they have to operate under.
Paul, by Cayman Island is something called, fair evaluation, and basically equal. Like, whatever the Class B gets bought out, the what do you call it, the earn-out clause, the Class A also needs. But I think also from the challenges is that it comes down to Class A holders are saying, why can't we buy the Class B, right? Why only this exclusive? Because, in the contract, in the purchase agreement where the Glazers bought it, it's only said that only the Glazer family can hold the Class B shares, right?
Yeah, but that's the change in the memorandum. That's what they'll do. They'll change the memorandum. But it doesn't really matter if they change that memorandum because the Glazers still have to agree to sell the Class B shares. And this, again, is probably why you would see another kind of why this is taking so long, because Sir Jim is going to want to have legal agreements in place that the Glazers won't be able to sell them Class B shares to anybody else. He's going to want to actually have agreements, kind of like an extended exclusivity period, where if you're looking to sell any of your shares, you have to come to me first at this price point.
Yeah. And goes a little bit what Jarvis is saying here.
I can just briefly add to that, Paul. And the point I was getting to is that even if the procedure is set out in the Articles of Association, there are underlying principles, for example, obligation to treat all shareholders equal and so forth, that could make potentially amending the articles a complicated procedure. So that's another unknown. And I can also add in relation to the rights for the minority shareholders on the Cayman Island, that they are still limited. I wouldn't personally buy shares in Manchester United, or as a lawyer, if I got a question which would be more relevant from, for example, institutional fund asking me, okay, can we invest in this company? Would we have sufficient protection? The only answer you can give is that it's very limited the minority shareholders get. So this further complicates this, because at least I can't, as a Swedish lawyer who isn't an expert on Cayman Island law, nor English law, nor US law,
but read about it a lot.
Exactly. Yeah. But what I've been able to gather on this, I can't see a straight pathway that makes sense here from all perspectives. I can only guess if A is the case, then perhaps the parties must do B and C and so forth. But I think it's still very unclear, and that's when taking a step back and analyzing this entire situation. I think that's, we must keep that in mind, that we get a lot of information through the media, but that information only regards a very small part of the transaction. Really, it's like Paul said, he mentioned the four transactions or agreements that must be put in place. We get a few tidbits in relation to one of them. Then we also get information that sporting control will be included, and that's another tidbit in relation to the fourth. But everything in between is still unclear.
Yeah. That leads me to the transition of the next question. But before we do that, thank you so much. We have a super chat coming in from Nigel Flynn to say, thank you, Nigel Flynn, for your contribution. Hi, Mick, Paul, and Swedish Rumble. I feel that any restructuring can only be a positive regarding sustaining Manchester United as a top club. And that is so good question, because that leads to the transition of the next topic, which is, how would Ineos get sporting control 25% and make it successful? Because I want us guys to sort of answer Nigel Flynn, because I feel that 25% is not enough. I mean, if you look at commercially, this is where Manchester United is making most of their money. From a commercial standpoint, we don't really need a sugar daddy. We just need somebody that doesn't take money out of the club. There's debris falling out from the infrastructure. Infrastructure needs to be repaired. And the question is then, guys, as a minority 25% investor, how much money can you actually pump into the club? I mean, if you're taking over the sporting operational side of it, there's certainly debt to be cleared. And how much money can you actually pump in the infrastructure? We've seen reports that, Ineos and Sir Jim Ratcliffe personally want to put in 300 million. But at the end of the day, Glazers don't care about that, how much money they're going to pump in. So I want us to answer this and make sense out of this, because I certainly can't. 1 + 1 = smoke without fire, according to my position. And Nigel.
I think if we look at this in isolation, then it's quite. The club must get the capital contribution of, in total, up towards 1.5 billion pounds. Manchester United need an investment, and this investment can't come in the form of a loan. regardless if Ineos owns 0% or 25%, or it's possible for them or any other investor, if the board of directors of Manchester United think it's a good idea, they can issue more shares and for 1.5 billion, and the Ineos can subscribe for them. So purely when we discuss the mechanics for it, it's easy to achieve this investment and get the money into the club. What gets complicated is that it must make sense for everyone. It must be a good idea for Ineos to acquire 25% first, and that money would only go to the Glazers, and then let's say if Ineos were to subscribe for new shares for a total of 1.5 billion over the coming years, that would be another 25% on a non-diluted basis, but that would leave the Glazers
a higher evaluation price to buy out. I mean, if you look at 3 years, high risk and reward. So basically, if you pump in now you buy 25% on this, let's say 1.4, and there's got to be a clause in that contract that, which I doubt the Glazers will ever give up, to say, within 3 years.
Whoa. Oh, no, never mind. Sorry.
Never mind. False news, right?
No. Somebody just sent a quote from Ferguson there to me.
Okay.
Apparently, Ferguson was doing an interview with Gambling Zone, and one of the quotes he said in it. Sorry, I'm just bringing it back up here. Okay. Alex Ferguson on Ineos Steel. I'm still a director of the club. I know Jim well. We should have to see what he does, but I'm optimistic of the incoming.
Well, that means that optimistic of whatever is incoming, right? Of course. I feel that,
Yeah.
So, where was I? I mean, you interrupted my train of thought, my friend. So just get the flow going. So I lost my train of thought. So, Ola, do you remember what I was talking about? Sorry.
No, it was this in relation to this process.
Yes, the process. The process, the 3 years. So the danger that I see now, like if you put in 1.4 billion, right? You absolutely, if you're talking about a valuation price, currently, like Manchester United on Forbes is valued at 4.8 billion, right? On Forbes. So if he puts down 1.5 billion now, 25%, that's remaining is what? 75%. And within 3 years, there's got to be some clarity to say, okay, it's taking over the sporting operation. But that's not going to generate a lot of money. And a lot of companies that are investing are expecting some return on investment. There's a lot of things that it's in my mind that does not make sense. And what about the debt? And what about the sporting operation is the one responsible for recruitment, for player management, for actually, and part of that is the FFP as well. And FFP is basically you spend within the means of what you're generating and operating. And the commercial one is the one side of Manchester United is the one that's more lucrative, right? But what about the sporting operations? So people getting giddy to say, oh, well, look, you got to give you a new CEO, a new sporting director. But what about the funds? What about going to the market? What about clearing that Santander's 300 million extra credit line that you took, last season as well, which was disclosed in the financial report? So there's a lot of things that doesn't really make sense to me. You know what I mean?
Well, the funding and the debt payment actually is quite easily explained, and how you get money into the club and where Sir Jim can make sure he decides where that money comes. And that is very simple as a debt equity swap. They could structure it in a certain way where when debt payments are due, like we're due 60 million to Santander next year, is he basically does a debt equity swap. So Glazers give him, I don't know how the share structure would work. Usually it works with minute diluted shares.
So you mean that
basically Jim pays off the debts, and when he pays off the debts, he absorbs the debt. So that's 60 million, say we're due next year. He absorbs it. The Glazers dilute a portion of their shares. That increases his holding in the company, and it also then at the same time is investing into the company. And because that money's going in, he gets to decide how it's spent. Yeah,
I hear you. But here's the thing. So basically, as a minority, this is the legal question that I'm asking Swedish Rumble. As a legal question, can a minority stakeholder on 25% that is actually holding 12, let's say case scenario 12.5 B share, 12.5 A shares. How much money can a minority investor pump into the club, and can that minority then absorb the entire debt what we own? Because currently the club made a revenue on 650 million, but the debt is around 1 billion. So is it possible, is it plausible that Ineos can absorb that debt and restructure the finance? That means that Bank of America and everyone else holds that bond, and that debt needs to go away. And most of the global fan base don't want this debt. And I want this to be clear.
Yeah. So it's possible, and it can be done through Ineos loaning money, in the most simple terms, to Manchester United. Manchester United
Manchester United
debt. Use that money to repay the external debt. And then Ineos has a claim on Manchester United under the loan, and then that claim can be set off against new shares. So that's basically what Paul mentioned there, a debt equity swap. And so that would reduce the debt on Manchester United's balance sheet, since first you substitute the debt the club has towards the banks with debt to Ineos, and then that debt to Ineos is converted to shares, which and it's in the definition of shares equity. It's not, and it wouldn't be a debt anymore. It's a right to receive parts of the profit of the club, basically. And it doesn't matter in this context if Glazers or Ineos would have 0% or 10% or 25%. A company can issue shares to an outsider if it's deemed to be the best option for the company and all shareholders, and so that wouldn't really be the mechanics. It's possible to make the mechanics works, but at the end of the day, you must end up with an environment that makes sense for everyone. The Glazers have just turned down 5-6 billion of a 5-6 billion offer, an offer based on a 5-6 billion valuation from 9-2 Foundation.
That's what they're saying, speculating on the media. Yes.
Yeah. So this if that's true, this option must be more favorable for them, and I
why? But why is it more favorable? Is it because of financial forecasts, or is it because you get in 25% on 1.4, and within 3-4 years, the remaining of the 75% is going to be worth like 7, 8, 9, 10 billion?
I don't think it'll be that high. Generally, what you find, even if you go in at 30, that's what I'm saying.
If he couldn't buy Chelsea for 4 million, why is he doing this? Can he actually afford to buy when it's
well? He could afford to buy Chelsea. He could afford to buy Chelsea. His bid was financed for Chelsea. He came into the process too late, and because of the time constraints of Chelsea losing the footballing license, he wasn't allowed to come in. But the simple thing is, if he goes in at $33 a share now, and he has a stipulation, this is pure speculation, but to show an example how it could work, is he have a stipulation that says, okay, next year I'll buy another 15% of the Glazers shares, for instance. If United's revenues are at 670 million, I'll pay a $3 premium on top of my original base price. If he pays a $3 premium on top of the original base price, that pits United's valuation from, what is it they've said, $5.2 billion. If he pits another $3 a share, that pits his valuation up to close to $6 billion with just a $3 a share, because every dollar of a share added on to the valuation increases the value, the enterprise value of United by just about $160 million. So the thing is, it's a complicated version, but it can be explained in the simple way of an earnout, except for, as I say, this one would be a hell of a lot more complicated by the sounds of things, but the precedent has been set, and it's set a lot of businesses that do disagree on valuation of the asset that they're selling or buying do earnouts. You look, Subway is a perfect example. Subway have just signed a deal there where their earnout clause over the next so many years changes the valuation of the business from, I think it's like $8.2 billion to $9.8 billion. And that's an earnout basis if Subway hit their targets.
Yeah.
And
I mean, this
is the question. Yeah. This is the question we need to ask. What was the 9-2 Foundation's bid?
Nobody
Did
knows.
it include debt? That's the point. Nobody knows. But the assumption is
silence is
if they go with this, but if they go with this bid, the clear indication from any person in business will tell you that the terms of that bid were not as favourable as Sir Jim's on the money wise, because that's all the Glazers care about is money.
Here's my problem with this whole media saga. For me, it's been analyzing the news. I analyze every single word, scrutinize. I got a photographic memory. For me, this has been one shambolical article and one Pulitzer Prize winner after another, right? For me, it's just been creating this gravy train, what I call it. Forgive me my language, but it's purely headlines and regurgitation and speculations. And because at the end of the day, nobody really knows the figures. Nobody really knows the truth, because the NDAs goes both way, right? And what I have a problem is because the media has been creating this narrative. The media has been creating these deadlines to say next Monday, this Monday, next week, who's really leading the race. All of a sudden, Sir Jim Ratcliffe is leading the race. He ran out of fuel. His bid was dead underwater, and all of a sudden he was overturned by Sheik Jassim. And it's been one hell of a story, one hell of a narrative. So you don't really know what the hell to believe anymore. So what it comes down to at the end of the day, the way I read into it, it started all with Sky News reporting. You know, Sky News, if you just follow the trail, Sky News was the one that's been driving this Sir Jim Ratcliffe. It started with David Hellier to say, when he's David Hellier from Bloomberg, by the way, they started to say that Sir Jim Ratcliffe is dead, bid is out, dead out of the water. That was in the summer. And say, wait a minute, he's coming back to restructuring his deal on 25%, right? And now he bought himself time to put his bid in. And we're coming to the end of the strategical review, which means that all bidders that's been part of this shadow bidding process, orchestrated by the Rain Group, is waiting for feedback. That's the way I read into it. On the other hand, they've been reaching out to 9-2 Holding Foundation for a comment. And all they said is due to NDAs and legally, we cannot comment. And Fabrizio Romano followed up to say, oh, by the way, they're out. It's like Fabrizio Romano calling up Sheik Jassim and say, yo, Sheikhy, it's me, Fab, how about a comment? And he says, well, we cannot comment because the NDA. And what would Sheik Jassim all of a sudden say to him was no official statement from 9-2 Holding Foundation to say, hey, by the way, Fab, when I have you online here, we're out. That doesn't make sense. But this whole felt like domino effect. And if you understand journalism, every single article and every single journalist is quoting Sky News from the very first beginning. The only one that's not doing it, it's actually Reuters, Aremban Sen. That's actually sticking to his guns. There's one story to say he just refused to increase more. He's out of the process. That means he's not going to entertain the bidding. So for me, it's a high-stake poker game, the billionaire's poker game. I call you bluff right now. So our bid is on the table. We're not going to entertain any further. We're not going to see, because we are the only one bidding against ourselves for 100%. So let Sir Jim Ratcliffe put in his bid on 25, and let's see how it goes. Let's the best men's win. But I think that the British media has been creating this narrative and smokescreen, and from a PR perspective, it creates great PR for Ineos itself. But I always say silence is golden. You don't really have to, if you're confident, if you feel that you put in an evaluation 2 times higher than Forbes evaluation, all you need to do is sit there, because they know that Glazers are broke. They know the Glazers want to sell, or they need money. So at the end of the day, take it with a pinch of salt and ain't over to the fat lady thing. That's what I...
The only thing I was saying that there is you're being really, 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 really badly disgenerous to Mark Clattenham from Sky Sport, or not Sky Sports, from Sky News.
He's good. He's good. He's get some
He's good. He's the first reporter to announce the strategic review before it happened. He was the first reporter to announce Arnold leaving. Believe me, knowing that CEO of a company is stepping down hours before it happens is basically you're talking even bigger levels than NDA practices for a transactional takeover. That is quite sensitive information. He was the first guy to report that the Sir Jim deal 25%, because these guys know.
That means that Clattenburg is speaking to somebody that to break the NDA.
Yes.
And what's the legal implications of breaking an NDA?
Nothing.
Swedish.
Because the legal implications of the NDA is up to the parties involved. If them parties involved do not really care about that information coming out now, they could do waivers. If one of the parties has looked like he's coming in, he'll ask for a waiver of the NDA so that he can approach other people to come onto board, as you say, Jean-Claude Blanc, as you say, maybe Paul Mitchell. Generally, sometimes near the end of the deal, you find certain parts of the aspects of the NDA have been waived, or you find somebody's just leaked out the bit for information.
Swedish Rumble, please. You're a commercial. You're a lawyer. Please make sense.
Yeah, and it's exactly like Paul states there that an NDA is complicated. First of all, if you breach a contract, the other party can sue you for damages. But what would the damages be if in a situation like this? It's very hard for Manchester United to say that the club lost X million due to the leak, that a strategic review was initiated, or that Richard Arnold would be sacked. But on the other hand, it's an employee doing it. It could be grounds for being fired, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And you have the stock market rules also. But meanwhile, if someone leaks to a reporter, it will be impossible for anyone to go to the reporter and get the information.
There's some stories, of course, regarding the sacking of Arnold, and that it's got nothing to do with the structural change or whoever comes in, because whoever comes in will bring in own people. There's been, I would say at the moment, rumors, what I'm being hearing, speaking to some people, that he got actually fired for leaking information. And how I've been handling the Mason Greenwood situation, everything off the pitch as well, and some leaks to the press regarding the takeover stuff as well.
And that's a very important point to make also, that there are so many parties involved in this that all
100%.
have different interests. You have Richard Arnold or anyone in the executive management of Manchester United who has a job they want to keep. Both parties, Ineos and 92 Foundation, will of course have engaged PR consultants, lawyers, and so forth in the UK. And as I understand it, and I think you guys know this better than me, but much of the information the journal reporters get comes from, for example, PR advisors to 92 Foundation and Ineos, and that speaks on their behalf. And they could have an interest in this transaction getting attention in the media, because they are
definitely.
And you can try to influence everyone's actions but by creating a narrative in the media and so forth. So it's very hard to analyze the information, as we have seen.
I speak from a logical standpoint for somebody with a journalistic background as well, because for me, journalism doesn't exist anymore. Journalism, the way when I went to school, when I taught by my gaffer, was always look at two sides of the story, always follow up, always never run a story if you're not 100% right. And this instant, silence is golden. There's one camp that's been silent, and I agree what CFAX Soccer is saying here. You haven't seen a statement coming out from 92 Holding Foundation. It's more been driven by the British media to say, hey, they're out of the process. But at the end of the day, you don't need to come out and say it. You don't. You can sit there silent. So for me, this is all, I don't know, it's been just a weird year, to be honest, right? And
generally the losing party doesn't come out and say they've lost. It's not like an election. You don't have a concession speech. Generally, the losing party and these things want to disappear into the ether as quickly as they appeared into the ether, especially with such a public takeover as this. Even if we put the basis, even if it is Sir Jim and Sir Jim gets it, you'll not see a statement from the 9-2 Foundation after it's all done, because they just don't care. They'll just move on. That's what happens in business.
I'm just conscious of time. I just want to wrap this up a little bit. And
the FFP one's more interesting.
FFP is definitely interesting, but 100%. I mean, if all we can do, an insensible thing, I guess I hope you can agree with me, but the way you will see it in that case is exactly what the club did with Richard Arnold. You will not find it out through the British journalists. You will not find it out from Sky News. I think the announcement will come through a club statement. 100%.
But we did find it out through Sky News, Mick. Sky News broke the story about Arnold.
Yeah.
2 hours before the official statement.
Oh, so that means that somebody's leaking stuff out then.
Oh yeah, it happens in business all the time.
Then
like,
that means that there's no. I mean, that comes back to there's disarray within the club internally. Nobody really knows what's going on. If their job's going to be safe, they haven't got a pre-shows, meaning they haven't had any salary increases.
Do you want to know one of the biggest indications? And Swedish Wumble will maybe agree in this one that there's going to be massive changes on that boardroom level. Is the fact that Patrick Stewart is our interim CEO. Logic dictates in a situation where you have an interim CEO comes in, that's your chief financial officer. It's the chief financial officer will generally be the next person in the succession line. It's very weird that you've hit your head of legal that's been at the company less than 2 years as your interim CEO. So that suggests that not everybody on the board's jobs are safe. So it suggests, you're looking at that, it suggests.
As a disclaimer, gentlemen, Patrick Stewart, we're not talking about the Star Trek Patrick Stewart. Beam me up, Scotty. Swedish, you're saying?
No, I agree. It's a good point by Paul. The natural, the CFO, I would say, in 19 of 20 cases becomes the interim, just like the assistant manager becomes the interim manager normally if he doesn't go along with the manager that's sacked. So in this case, it's almost like they pick up the manager of the youth team and makes him the interim manager, but keeps the assistant manager as assistant manager. So it's a bit odd.
Fantastic. Sorry, guys, I just changed the scenes because at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is keep your powder dry. There's some indications there's changes happening structurally above Erik ten Hag, which is positive. But the question is, I work in change management. I work with people and culture. And I say that if you do expect changes immediately, think twice, because any rebuild takes about 2 to 3 years, when you construct your rebuild plan. City has done it. They've gone through it. You currently witness Newcastle doing it as well, organically. And what we've been lacking at the club is a clear vision, is a sporting vision. We've been run by bankers ever since David Gill stepped down, ever since, Sir Alex stepped down as well. These guys took over. And Glazers is kind of, I'm hating everything what Glazers has been done to the club. But Glazers have never had a front seat anyway. They've always been leasing out kind of to the people to run the club on a daily basis and trusting those people. But what gets me is I don't want any Glazers to sit there if it's 25%, that needs to be ratified. We need to see the clear manifesto. What is your plan, Sir Jim? What you want to do? And the question still remains, is Sheik Jassim 92 Holdings still in the background lingering on? We will never know. We will never know, because what we will find out at the end of the day, the truth will come out there, right?
Yeah.
Near the end, we'll find out everything, hopefully. Well, not everything. We'll find out most stuff.
Okay, guys, let's park this one. This takeover saga rumbles on. And then, as what I said, when it was international break, do be prepared. It's going to be a lot of noise, a lot of smoke, but where's the fire? And lo and behold, one came out sales takeover is imminent Monday. Nope. It was the funeral on Friday. Nope. Now it's never. Now it's next year, and so on and so on and so on. So, don't read everything that you read. Use your logic, sense, and reasoning. Always criticize what you're reading. But at the end of the day, it's your truth. What we're doing here is just, reading the news, analyzing the news and putting our professional opinions to it. So what we're saying here is not news. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Smash that like, subscribe if you haven't. We will get to your comments as well. Can we get over 100 likes? That would be great, because we're not like the greedy Glazers. We don't take your dividends. If you super chat, it's up to you. If you subscribe, it's better. But if you hit the likes, help this video to get up to the YouTube algorithm, which is not nice. It's a jungle out there, people. Thank you so much for tuning in as well. So I want to bring in the FFP. That's cracking down at the moment. And that has been... I mean, what's going on here with the FFP and the Premier League? Like, are they making Everton as a minority and as an example to start with before the cracking down on City and everyone else? I thought I saw something yesterday about Spurs also getting investigated as well.
Yeah,
Spurs one was different.
So let's start with Swedish.
And firstly, regarding the Spurs news, it was labeled as an investigation, finding out that they perhaps had some irregularities. But as I understand it, the investigation was made by the Times, so it's not a Premier League charge at this point, and I would be surprised if it was. But
the Premier League have already investigated it, Swedish. They investigated back in 2010 and they found there was no evidence of it. That's all it was, and now the Premier League are looking to review their investigation because they said they didn't find anything back then.
Yeah.
And I think why is this a story? I think it's, from the Times point of view, what have the Premier League been doing all these years? And now they have a pretty big backlog that they are digging into. But I think if you start with the Everton case, and I think we had another circumstance that was announced yesterday that plays into this, and this was the resolution from the Premier League to not allow, to not ban loans from related parties, which basically would have been a hit against Newcastle, and that shows that the majorities perhaps have changed within the Premier League, because if you take a step back, it's very obvious that the majority in the Premier League for the last decade or more have constructed a system that's meant to be potent and be able to perhaps primarily stop Manchester City. The rules doesn't mention Manchester City specifically, but they are designed to be able to result in very harsh sanctions for anyone that breaches them, and they put a lot of weapons in the hands of the Premier League to pursue breaches of FFP rules. And I think that nobody should have an objection against that from kind of a logical point of view, because the FFP provisions will decide which teams are competitive on the pitch and will prevent teams from making acquisitions or signing players the manager will want, and that would help them on the pitch. And if these rules aren't applied strictly, any team cheating them or circumventing them will get a big advantage. And
of course.
So the Premier League has weapons to go after Everton and Manchester City and Chelsea.
But one thing that we know about is when it comes to Premier League, and they don't back down. There is no way. I mean, if you looked at what City did and with the time bar stamping in the sport arbitration court in Switzerland, all they did was just kicking that can further down the road, and by appealing, and there was a time bar stamp, and then he ended up coming into the Premier League. But in Premier League, you cannot do that. They're very strict. Once they set the ruling, they don't back down. That's the thing. But what I read about is that they haven't really got to it, is aware of it. So the question is, when will it happen, and what will be the consequences? Because at the end of the day, they shot themselves in the foot by releasing the financial statement they made. You're telling me that they are more profitable than Real Madrid and the biggest club in the world with 700 million? Are you telling me that you made this profit from? Everyone knows you have Etihad, which everyone calls the empty had. Everyone knows that since Sheikh Mansour took over in 87, I think it was 87, right? City was a mid-table club, almost hovering the relegation zone. But surely, I mean, from any sporting merit or Olympics, whoever, cycling, if you've done doping, you get stripped off your medals. You're taking off your records. Ben Johnson in sprinting, Olympic sprinting, got banned. We got Neil Armstrong in cycling, legendary, got banned. But why doesn't it apply for everyone? Surely it's got to come down, cracking down to City as well right now. I mean, when you come to Premier League, there's no more kicking down that can down the road.
Yeah, and to build on that analogy, I think it's sometimes these athletes that do doping build up their body with steroids for a few years, and after that they don't need to maintain that with more steroids. They can keep
they build the physique already, like
and I think that's the point City is at today. They are heavily scrutinized right now, and I wouldn't expect further charges to be made in relation to what have happened the last years, but
it would just delay it.
Yeah, during this period, from 2010 basically to 2020, that's the period where their dealings definitely can be challenged, and it's also the period during which FFP rules were introduced. So it's kind of a.
But
the regulator has been chasing City basically in that context, and implemented rules along the way constantly. So it's it puts therein lies the challenge basically.
Yeah, but that's in a way like what if we take that analogy as a bodybuilder, you've been propping yourself with steroids to build up dream physique body, and this is what they've been doing since 2010. What you're saying, they've been building that squad and winning in the same time by cheating, according to my opinion, right? But if they set a 10-point deduction for Everton, they set the bar there, they set a precedence, they set a benchmark. But what about these 115? Because 115 charges, according to my understanding, includes, breaching the financial fair play, meaning the overall cooking the books, the overall playing squad, the overall declaring salaries, the remuneration packages for the manager. It's been hidden, right? And why are you hiding that in certain sense? Everyone knows that you are not the big club. You don't have a big fan base. And now you're coming out and releasing a financial report on 700 million. Everyone knows that he's been pumping in his money through different shady cousins, and you know what I mean, just to stay to compete. And I understand they want to be the best in the world, win at all costs. And as soon as that goal went in for Aguero, this is where they got the taste to be the best, to be competing. Now they won the treble.
Yeah,
I personally believe if they are been doping, if they should be stripped down all the trebles, everything. Make it equal. So if you've done this for a small club like Everton, who, by the way, complied and worked with Premier League to say, yes, we are guilty. They thought they were getting a fine. But why is not the big clubs? Because I think at the end of the day, it comes down to the Premier League broadcasting, right? So when City's playing, when Liverpool is playing, when Arsenal's playing, it generates a lot of views, right? And therefore, it's so easy for them to get away with it. But now I think you already set this punishment for Everton, who's, by the way, is going to hover down in relegation. Fair enough, you cheated, fine, you should get punished. But we got to have it equally. So what would be the implication for 115 charges?
Yeah.
Should it be total relegation? Should it be relegation 2 zones like they did with Juventus in Serie A?
Yeah.
Could I just make one point actually about the 115 charges as well? Is you have to. I think the 115 charges is not significant in the fact that they're 115, and what they've done to Everton makes come up to the conclusion. I don't think they're going after City for for financial doping. I think they're going after City for blatant avoiding of rules. What basically City have, what Everton were charged for is Everton were charged mainly for speeding. If you're driving a car and you're speeding, what Man City have been charged for is they've been caught speeding. They've drove away from the police and they've changed their number plates. And I think the 115, that's technically the easiest way I can explain what they've done.
Yeah.
And what the 115 charges is basically they're putting out there. So when they go to this independent commission, because believe me, since the Premier League charged Man City, this is no longer in the Premier League's hands. Technically, once the Premier League charges Man City, it goes to the commission. The Premier League become the plaintiff and Man City become the defendant. So the Premier League can't push this along any quicker than it's going. It's up to the commission to do that. But basically what they're trying to do is they've built a big, massive case to show these guys don't respect the rules.
But
they don't respect
from
authority.
From a legal perspective, I'm going to ask Rumble. He's a lawyer as well. From a legal perspective, you got to come then to the arbitration to say you got to have solid facts there before you present. Otherwise, you're going to lose the case, right? So, by my memory, what I read, okay, they're done Everton, fine. The case is for cities there. They haven't, yet come to the point to charge as yet, because is it that they are still collecting and the evidence?
No, they're charged.
Have a solid case, or
no? The Premier League has passed all its evidence onto the commission now. So they're not gathering any information. It's all in the commission's hands now to say to name the board.
Long, my question is, how long can this take now? Because they cannot kick the can further down the road like they did with the arbitration of sport in Switzerland. So how long? Because now you saw the Everton was quick, but this is massive, 115.
Yeah, and I think it's, first of all, I agree. I think Paul puts it in a perfect way there with his analogy to leaving the scene of crime and trying to conceive it. I think this is a case where that basically I would separate it into two parts. First of all, the huge chunk of Manchester City's revenues is questioned, and UEFA made the allegation that all the sponsorship money that comes from Etihad and all these firms, they are concealed payments from the owner, and so that's one part. But in addition to that,
from the owner, yes,
that's
cheap. That is pretty much doping, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think that, but that's also the part of the case that could be the hardest to prove, because is it possible that the Emirates or these companies just wanted to support Manchester City?
They wanted to win at all costs, 100%.
Yeah, and there are strong connections between companies and the owner of City and the country, Abu Dhabi there. But that's just one part. In addition to that, you have a long list of alleged more minor breaches, and I think that's when I take a step back and analyze this case. I think that's what made the Premier League pull the trigger and charge Manchester City. They saw that going back to Mancini's contract and those payments 13 years ago, and you add on signing youth players like Jadon Sancho and Brahim Diaz when they were 13 or 14 years old, and during almost this entire period, the last 13 years, it seems possible for the Premier League to evidence more or less constant breaches of the rules. And even if those breaches haven't resulted in Manchester City getting increasing their earnings with several hundred millions, it's still looks very damaging for Manchester City, and I think that's what it comes down to. And from that perspective, it also makes the case very large.
Yes, it does. I mean, arguably to say, like, when Sheikh Mansour bought Manchester City, he absolutely knew what he was buying, because he knew that it was a small club, minimum of fans. And now you're telling me with these latest financial reports, are you telling us, are you treating us as mugs that you generated 700 million in profit? Come on. When you go to the finals, like, when there was a Champions League finals, the people that bought the merchandise were tourists, basically. And all you could hear, was Inter Milan fans singing. You didn't hear the. I mean, I'm sorry to say, but I'm against foul play. It should be treated equal. If you're now done, if Premier League is not done Everton for breaching the financial fair play, because it's all about the overall debt. There's a threshold which they surpassed. I think it was 109 million or something in terms of debt, what you can sort of surpass, or was it 119? And they done something 300, and they declared it anyway, but they still went to both player under this, and they've been upfront. So there's different types.
They also had stuff as well, Mick.
Right.
They also had stuff as well. They had the payment off for Sigurdsson off their accounts as well, Everton, which was which is kind of where I think the massive point deduction has come from. It's not come from them going over that limit. It's the fact that they were actually doing what Man City have done, but in a different way, was they were hiding payments, because Sigurdsson was actually bringing a case against them because he got sacked because he wasn't found guilty. He was basically innocent of what he was accused from.
Yeah.
Everton sacked him and he sued them for 12 million. Sigurdsson then dropped that case, but then got paid 12 million by a subsidiary company, but the money came from Everton and they hid it. So that's why they got hit with a big, massive 10-point deduction, because it's not breaking the rules, but it's knowingly trying to circumvent them, which is a bigger deal than breaking the rules. And Man City have seemed to do that on a bigger scale, way bigger scale.
Yeah.
So,
but what makes this? If we could go back to the discussion we had when we mentioned that the Premier League has weapons in their hand to pursue this, and part of that is that there are very limited procedural rules for the judges of this case. For example, the cause, they have a set rule book. If you go to a court, you have an act stipulating exactly how the procedure will be carried out, and in that context, it's possible to delay significantly any procedure. And if this was to be handled in the court, it could literally be 10, 15, 20 years before we get a ruling.
Wow.
But,
Are you serious?
You
that's if it was in a court, Mick. That's if it was in a court. Our procedures are different.
Yeah, this is yeah,
this is different.
I was thinking of the independent investigation.
No, but since this in the independent commission they make up their own rules.
Of course they do.
For the procedure, they decide.
That's why I said they never back down. Once the ruling is set, you cannot overrule. That's it, bang.
And I think if the commission goes along and wants to review everything at once and thoroughly turn every stone, this is probably a 3-4 year procedure from the start. But I wouldn't rule out that the independent commission, for example, if it were to pass the threshold for saying that, well, this should result in relegation. I don't think it will go for relegation. I think they'll do it a different angle. What I think they'll actually turn around and say to Man City is, we don't blame the club, we blame your owners. Sell your club. I think they go down that path.
Oh, I
think they'll say it's not the club. We don't want to relegate the club. So what we're going to say to you is, them owners have shown deceit, dishonesty, and to point blankly pit it, if this was in any other organisation, they've committed fraud on a massive level.
Yeah,
you have all the indication.
I'll just
Yeah,
say,
those indications.
bring Sheikh Mansour in front of the CEO of Premier League. Ask him the hard questions. This is the implications. Either you sell the club or you will be penalised yourself. You're being
what they'll say is we will no longer grant the Abu Dhabi Group a license to own a Premier League football club, which is totally within their arsenal to do it. But if they do it that way, the way the Premier League can then portray it is we've not denting the achievements of Man City. Because then if they do it that way, that means then they don't have to deal with all the other clubs coming up with legal challenges. And I think it makes it a lot less work if they just say it's the owners, not the club. You can't take away the club's achievements. It was the owners that basically did all the wrongdoing. So you have to sell. It's just an easier.
That happens, and Glazers swoops in and buy Manchester City.
but in that case,
I think that's the quickest way.
Yeah, but in that case, they must show that really the sponsor payments from Etihad and so forth aren't even sponsor payments. But
they have the emails.
Yeah, but they have to show that they aren't even inflated sponsor payments, but they are more or less fraudulent payments from the owner just moved around. And even if the emails are
money laundering.
Yeah. Even if the emails give that impression, it's not entirely easy to prove that. So.
Oh no, but that's the point. This is the point about the commission. The commission is a little bit different to like the cast and stuff. If the Premier League believe that these emails are genuine and truthful and the information they're portraying is true, they present that to the board. The board of the commission board then go to Man City going, can you disprove these emails? The only way City theoretically can disprove them emails is if they give the commission their email accounts. And if we all know, if they hand over them email accounts, they'll probably find about 50 million other things that City have been doing dodgy.
I'm going to throw some. Yeah, sorry.
No, I agree. It's a good point Paul makes. But I think it's what at least seems probable from my point of view is that they will be able to establish a long list of breaches. They will have grounds to request very severe sanctions for that. In addition, there are allegations, at least made by UEFA, that more or less should result in the owners disqualifying themselves from owning a Premier League club. I think that's
fines is not enough. Fines is not enough because these guys got big pockets. They can pay it in blink of eye.
Yeah.
So yeah. But that leads me to a hypothetical question. How deep do you think that the British government gets involved with this because of geopolitical status? Like, we saw something yesterday was a breach. I mean, British government went in and put some pressure on to actually approve the PIF Saudi Arabia email leaks. And that's the question that I oppose, because these are powerful people. We are talking about the rich states and oil-rich countries. How influence do you think they can have to put pressure on the government? We have invested so much in your country, X, Y, Z. Therefore, put pressure on the Premier League and approve.
I don't think very, very little, because the fact is the government at the moment is trying to bring an independent body in. If they bring an independent body in and say, for instance, the Premier League challenges that independent body in the High Court for being a regulator, which they can do, and they find out that any kind of leaks like you had for the Newcastle thing come out from Man City, the Premier League just take them leaks, take them emails, take that correspondence, goes, the government tried to apply pressure on us to go easy on Man City. Why should they be in charge of an independent body? And the High Court goes, government, you're not having an independent regulator now. You clearly are not independent. If you know what I mean, you have to justify it. And if the government's able to put pressure on the Premier League, they're able to put pressure on an independent body. And we've already seen that this year. We've seen it with the CMA. The CMA were hell-bent on blocking the Activision deal. They got applied pressure from political bodies. And then all of a sudden they came up with this new thing that they were totally okay with, and it solved all their problems. So I don't see the Premier. I don't see any outside force coming to pit this. Also, the big thing is the Premier League clubs are going to decide if this punishment goes through or not. It's the exact same thing that happened in Scotland with Rangers. And if anybody thinks that 14 out of the 20 Premier League clubs that it will cost to pass the foot wouldn't want to punish Man City in a way, you're sorely mistaken. Every single one of them will be thinking, we take Man City out of it, we'll make more money because that's one less competitor out the door.
Just gonna round up. If I want to ask the a final word also from Swedish Rumble. I'm conscious about time. I think it's been 1 hour and 20 minutes, and people that's tuning in, don't forget to like and subscribe to this video and this channel. We are on a road for 18,000 subscribers, so please help this channel to grow. Mark is saying, are we saying forcing City to sell will maintain the club standards? ? Sponsors, etc. If they do that, why didn't they do that to the Glazers, or just another form of phobic or non-Westerners? Well, that's what I'm trying to bring in, geopolitics, politics, and influence. And I think that football has changed. I think it's not the game that we are seeing in the past before. We're talking about the VR rulings and everything else, how it's going to automatic system. The way I grew up was football was a beautiful game for the people. Now I see so much corruption going on, so injustice. What's going on the pitch? With the VR and justice, refereeing decision. You can only speculate about the brown paper envelopes floating around, and UEFA. Everyone knows Blatter. All them UEFA are. Do I dare to say it? Swedish Rumble without getting any legal complications here.
They like a brown envelope. Say it that way. They like a brown envelope.
Yes.
Doesn't matter what's in the envelope. They just like a brown envelope.
Politics and sports don't mix in together. Sports is a way, and football is a way of life. It's a way of escapism, and I kind of, it's getting ruined. It's getting definitely ruined with the VR rulings and the adjustments of Ballon d'Or, for instance, is just one. Just name it Messi ball, right?
Yeah. No, but exactly, and I think the Premier League must be very careful here because the players involved here are very powerful. It's not an individual company or owner that can be prosecuted. It's a country with intelligence agencies and so forth, and these things are important for them. That's why they spend billions on them, and it's not just about financial return. It's about the reputation and being in the public eye. Should they be pressed by more powerful neighbors, and so they definitely have an interest in maintaining this. That could result in the integrity of the sport being challenged. So that's. I would be very careful if I'm the Premier League to not do everything possible to safeguard the integrity of the sport.
I get that. With that final words, it's time to wrap up the show, gentlemen. It's been a very interesting podcast. I hope we made some sense of the day for people that, thank you, Swedish Rumble, for providing your insights. What we did discuss today makes sense about the 25%, the overall structure of this deal, why is it been delayed, the implications. It's fair to say that this deal is very, very complicated. And it's fair to say that, media has been treating this like a transfer window, setting the agendas, setting the deadlines for you guys to believe. But at the end of the day, what matters is that what I wanted to say is that that divide and conquer thing, right? They wanted to sort of feed you that, look, you look this way, you're getting a sporting director, you're getting a new CEO, but still, 25% as a fan, I do expect when I see my team play, I want to see 100% performance. So for me, it's always been 100% Glazers out. Do I satisfy myself with 25%? It's like asking me, do you want to see Manchester United play on 25% performance in every game? And I said no, because as a club we have high standards, and at the end of the day, it's yet to be find out. I don't believe that we're going to find out anything as what the media has been saying, because 23rd is Thanksgiving and it marks the 1 year of the evaluation. I don't think so. Patience is a virtue. I know mental health is a big concern as well within the global fan base. So thank you for tuning in. Always listen to a voice of reason. But what I want to say, keep it with a pinch of salt and don't believe everything that you read, gentlemen. I also want to thank Paul White for coming in as well, taking your time of the day. I didn't see you with your sweet tooth, what do you call it? Tim Hortons Frappuccino?
Stick for that at the moment. Not
Listen,
well
take
for
care
that
of
at the moment.
Take care of yourself. You have your man flu. Get well. And Swedish Rumble, wish you all the best and your family as well. Guys, for tuning in. Stick around for later on tonight. We have Let's Talk Football. We're not going to talk about Takeover tonight. We're just going to talk because football is coming back. We are playing Everton on Sunday, and we have a special panel tonight. We've got Double A coming in, and we have Coach Kojo, we have Jarvis Cocker, myself, and we're going to talk football. Until then, people, stay beautiful. Thank you, Swedish Rumble, for coming in. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Pleasure to be on.
And thank you, Paul, as well. It's time to close the shop. And please, guys, it's so important. Hit that like button. Let's get it up to 100, 150 in retrospective. Leave your comments in the comment section below, and we will review your comments and reply to you. Guys, it's been beautiful to have you here. Stay nice to each other on the socials. And until the next time, glory, glory, Manchester United. Glazers out, full sail only. That's what I am for. Thank you for watching, and bye for now. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching Mufc Realist TV. Don't forget to like and subscribe and follow us on the socials.